want to start with the series that I've probably seen the most discourse and hype around, mostly because it involves the Los Angeles Lakers, but they are also taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves, which I think is a really interesting matchup. And the first thing I want to talk about is, how do you expect the Timberwolves to approach guarding this Lakers offense that has so many weapons?
That is the most interesting key to me from the Wolves side, and specifically the question of, can the Wolves make Luka Doncic uncomfortable? This is a new-look Lakers squad that, added Luka Doncic at the deadline, and so we've only seen one head-to-head game between them with Doncic in the lineup. And I don't really like the Wolves' personnel that they're going to throw at him and how they match up against them. I just don't think they have the exact right archetype that they would need to really disrupt Luka. And, I mean, we saw this in the playoffs last year. Obviously, Luka was a Dallas Maverick, but a lot of the same supporting characters in Minnesota are going to be matched up against Luka in this matchup. If it's Anthony Edwards, if it's Jaden McDaniels, if it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And we saw Minnesota try a lot of different things in their one head-to-head matchup against LA, and it was – sometimes it's just man coverage, but sometimes you're seeing a 2-3 zone or a 3-2 zone. My conclusion, I don't know how you feel about it, Carson. I think Luka's going to get whatever he wants. I don't really think that any of Minnesota's perimeter defenders are really going to be able to throw Luka off of his own game. The one thing that I will mention that I think is important to do is that in that one game, he was super reliant on his three ball. It's kind of been a theme of him in the second half of the year with Los Angeles. That's his superpower to me against this team, though, is his ability to use his strength to his advantage and to back those guys down to the elbow, right, to the nail, spots like that, and manufacture whatever looks that he can, because Luka's so strong. I just don't think they have a guy that can match his strength on that side of the basketball, and I expect him to impose himself more. We've seen Luka be a little bit passive, feeling it out, and that's not anything novel, when you go to a new team, but I think he's going to be more aggressive, and that's one of my big takeaways for this Lakers offense is I think Luka and LeBron are going to get whatever they want. I don't think that Minnesota they're a great defense, and I don't want to take anything away from them, but I just don't think they have the exact right personnel to counter the two Lakers superstars. It's really as simple as that. I think you got to try to make life difficult on them. I just don't know what defensive personnel you apply to who, or I don't know what strategy you try to employ. I don't think there's a good answer for him.
Well, obviously, Luka filleted the T-Wolves in the playoffs last year. That was easily his best series of the playoff run. And part of that was incredible shooting. He was like 43% from three. But another part was, as great as the Timberwolves' perimeter defensive personnel is, you mentioned they don't have that guy who can counter Luka's strength. Specifically, Jaden McDaniels, one of the best perimeter defenders on the planet. He's conceding 50 pounds to Luka, so there's just too much of a strength gap there for him to make him uncomfortable, for him to keep Luka from getting to his spots in isolation. So I think that they start with Ant on Luka. Now, in terms of pick and roll defense, Jaden McDaniels is a significantly better screen navigator than Ant, so you are worried about Ant maybe not being as precise navigating those screens, but just in terms of his ability to guard Luka on an island, I actually think he is a significantly better answer because he just has that strength component. Is he a great option?
You think Ant's the best option for Luka?
I think Ant's a better option to cover Luka than Jaden McDaniels, but we saw them make that switch last year, and I did think that it was an improvement. It wasn't the answer, but it was an improvement. So I'm expecting them to start with that matchup, Ant on Luka, and then I've seen a lot of discourse about what do you do with Rudy in this series. I'm expecting them to just start with him on Jackson Hayes, and I think that you have him play drop and try to see how much pressure, back pressure Ant can apply getting around screens. And, if you play good perimeter defense, obviously Rudy Gobert is one of the best drop defenders in basketball. So, that could be a really, really good drop coverage duo. The challenge is, Luka is really, really good against drop. And, if he's comfortable and his touch shots are falling and he's getting to his floaters and he's able to walk into a couple pull-up threes, he's comfortable making all the reads when he gets into the lane against drop. That's the challenge of it, but I just struggle to see the alternatives. I've seen some people propose putting Rudy on a wing and just trying to keep him down low on the baseline as a helper as much as you can, keeping him out of getting involved in those pick and roll actions at all. I just worry that the Lakers shooting is too good. If that's Rui in the corner, if that's DFS in the corner, those are 40% three-point shooters. And I just think that Rudy is more impactful as a drop defender where he's excellent than he is trying to roam off of shooters
So,
too much and letting those guys get open looks.
Do you think that if you were the Timberwolves, would you try to match those minutes? Because I would be a little bit weary of Rudy potentially getting played off the floor a little bit in this matchup. I mean, the superpower that you're talking about with the Lakers, and I've noticed this stat in the past on our shows, the Lakers attempt damn near 8 more threes a game with Luka in the lineup than they did without Luka in the lineup, and they have elite spacing and shooting around them. So what would you do with that? Would you try to match the minutes with Jackson Hayes when they have a big body on the floor, and then when they go small, maybe go Naz Reid at the 5 and try to match their small ball looks? Would you try to exploit the fact that they're running small ball units and have Rudy out there to anchor the glass in the interior? Because I am a little bit nervous about Rudy Gobert in this matchup, man. I think just specifically because I think Rudy is really viable. Rudy gets a lot of hate from people in the basketball world, and I always defend Rudy. But this is a specific matchup where I'm really worried about him defending in space a lot and having to pull his weight on the perimeter and just having an exploitable piece of your defense. So what would you try to do with him?
I think that they're going to play Rudy a ton of minutes. And I think that there are some misconceptions about how small ball lineups work against Rudy. The biggest problem that Rudy has against small ball lineups, in my opinion, is that offensively, he can't punish you for going small. Now, maybe he's able to do so on the glass, but he usually doesn't do so as a scorer.
He has horrible hands.
Yeah. And then defensively, it's no fault of Rudy's. It's just if you can get away with playing true 5-out offense, you're going to mitigate any dominant rim protector's effectiveness because you're pulling him out into space more often. It's not that Rudy can't guard in space. That's been disproven a number of times. He's totally capable there, but it is obviously not where he's most effective, which is as a deterrent and rim protector on the interior. So I do expect the Lakers to go small a lot in this series, and I think that there's sort of some interesting dynamics at play there because if you think about what you're going to do with Rudy defensively there, let's say that now you're using DFS as the screener, you're using Rui as the screener for a Luka pick and roll. I think that Rudy stays in drop there because there's no vertical spacing dynamic from those guys, right? They're not going to be comfortable rolling. You're basically going to dare them to make above the break threes, and they're very good shooters. They're very good shooters, but what I would say is it's a different role when you're shooting pick and pop threes. And I think you've even seen like when they have used those guys as screeners against drop coverage. I think about the second Thunder game. Luka is a little bit more hesitant to even make those passes to those guys as poppers than he would be just making a kick out pass to the corner or a skip pass to the corner. So like there's obviously a world in which those guys are consistently getting found by Luka and they're making 40% of those above the break threes. And like, that's a huge problem for Minnesota. I don't really see the alternative though, when Rudy's on the floor and you take Rudy off the floor, Naz isn't the answer. Because Naz isn't better guarding in space.
He's not better guarding in space, but it definitely gives you a strong counter. And that's what I'm really trying to weigh here. Yeah. The pros and cons of playing Rudy, because I think Rudy could have a pronounced impact on the boards where maybe for stretches of the game, you know, he's just dominating the glass, and he's just eating there. My issue comes when I'm thinking about the supporting cast off of Anthony Edwards, because in that offensive set, it's like, what's stopping them from throwing doubles at Ant? Or
so you're saying if the Lakers go small, it's turning into a track meet, and you'd rather be able to just match their offensive
I wonder if that's a better
firepower?
counter, just because I worry about them in the half court specifically, really being able to gang up on Ant and throw multiple bodies at them, and the Timberwolves on the back end not being able to punish them because of Rudy's, you know, offensive inconsistencies and his deficiencies, because of Julius Randle's inconsistency in shooting, Jaden McDaniel's spacing, Mike Conley's inability to score the ball at this point in his career. And so I wonder if it's just worth it playing small. And the Wolves, I get that it's, you know, March and April basketball and such, but the Wolves small ball lineup had produced some really, really good results in the second half of this season. So that's just what I'm wondering, the trade-off, you know, because I think that Gobert does have his pros, but he's got some pretty big cons. When you take him off the floor, you're losing that defensive identity, but you're getting faster. I think you probably match up a little bit better with them speed-wise, and you have so much more offensive skill. That's the big trade-off that I'm looking. When you get Naz on the floor, I'm getting a 40% shooter from everywhere on the floor. I'm getting another guy who can reliably handle, just another guy the defense has to respect. And I just wonder if that spacing is better than what Gobert gives me.
I see what you're saying, and we'll certainly see minutes where Nas is at the 5, and I think then you can get a gauge of like, okay, how much are we winning this trade-off with our offensive production being better? But my inclination would be if the Lakers are going to spread you out with those small ball lineups, that's a problem for any team in the league, really, for any defensive group.
Because that defense can just hemorrhage threes at an insane rate.
Well, they're just going to generate a bunch of open threes
against
anybody when they have that much shooting and skill on the floor. I would still want to at least start with by far my best rim protector, by far my best rebounder, by far my best defensive player on the floor. See how convincingly you can win those minutes on the glass, because that could be big, right? The Lakers have been decent rebounding in their small ball groups, but the Timberwolves are an excellent rebounding team with Rudy on the floor.
Maybe it's a case-by-case basis, too, because what I was going to say is if the Lakers are missing shots, massive advantage Timberwolves. Like, if they're having an off-shooting night, Rudy is going to crush them on the glass.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not just Rudy. It's this collective. They're so big and strong and athletic. Like, they should dominate the glass if the Lakers are missing shots.
Julius Randle would be the second-best rebounder on the floor.
Exactly. I've just seen so many games where the Lakers just aren't missing, where they are just flame-throwing everything. And that's where Rudy's value is at its lowest.
The one other option that I can see the Timberwolves turning to with Rudy on the floor defensively against those small ball looks is pre-switching everything to keep him on the baseline. Just pre-switching so you can't bring him into the action. And that's possible that they attempt that, but I would probably start with him just playing drop.
What's the benefit of that?
The benefit of that is that he's constantly on the baseline, and so he's there as a help defender, and you're not bringing him out into space. The downside is he's an excellent drop defender, and so now you're just trusting you're switching on the perimeter. And again, the Lakers' shooting is so damn good that it's like, how much is Rudy going to be able to roam off and blow things up as the low man when there's a 40% three-point shooter in his corner?
Do you not think that JJ would try to bring that player into the action if that's what they were doing?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying they pre-switch Rudy out every single time.
Got you.
So if you call up his man to screen,
he stays low and they switch.
He stays low no matter what.
Got
and you
you.
pre-switch before you.
So he's basically just guarding that part of the floor.
Exactly. He would effectively be in like a one-man zone, right? He's just pre-switching every time. And I could see them trying that.
I definitely think they should.
Yeah. It's just hard, man. Like, any team with a conventional big is going to really struggle to defend the Lakers going small. And I think the Lakers are going to win those minutes when they do go small. Now, the Timberwolves have advantages there. They have advantages with their size, with their rebounding. But I just think the offense is going to be so good, and I don't know how much Rudy is really going to be able to punish them for going small. The other interesting part of the Lakers going small, which they're going to do for a lot of these minutes, right? The Timberwolves are a big team, so maybe they play Hayes a little bit more, but normally he gets about 20 minutes a night, and then the other 28 minutes of the game, they're going small, is how they match up defensively, because we know the offense is potent. How do you think the Lakers' defense matches up with Anthony Edwards in this series?
I think that's the other big question about this. I would put DFS and Hachimura on Ant, and I would play them both. I think they're the best potential matchups. If you're looking,
are you saying that you would start small with both those guys alongside the big three?
That's what's tough. Is I don't know what lineup they're going to run. If it's Jackson Hayes,
yeah, I think they'll start with Hayes.
I'm just saying, whoever's on the floor, those are the two primary guys I would want to have on Ant the most.
What about Vando? Do you think you just can't play Vando?
No, I think Vando is very playable. And I have not felt that way about Vando, but there's so much surrounding skill that if you're running Vando, I think Vando could wreak havoc on
He's the best Ant defender on the roster, no question. He's just the best point of attack defender they have.
I think if you're running,
the challenge is with Vando on the floor,
you can't run it with Hayes.
You can't do that, but also now Gobert has an out. He has like a non-threat on the floor
that he can sag off of.
That's a good point. Vando's not a threat as a roller. He's not a threat as a shooter. He's just not a scoring threat whatsoever. And so I wonder if you're effectively playing 4-on-5 offensively, even though Vando is your best perimeter defender, again, your best point of attack defender, but I would just be trying to limit Rudy's ability to stay parked in that paint as much as possible, and I think that Vando is the guy who gives him the easiest path to doing that.
That's a fair point. I would try Vando because I think you at least need to look at what he can give you in this series, and they're so desperate. They so desperately need, defensive playmakers. I think Hachimura and DFS are the two best that are going to be reliably playing minutes against Ant. That being said, if I'm the Minnesota Timberwolves, my objective every offensive possession is to hunt a switch when Ant has the ball in his hands on a Luka, on an Austin Reeves, on a Dalton Connect, on a Gabe Vincent. Any of these slower-footed, less agile guys, because I think DFS, not that he can, Ant's a freak. It's not like I think anybody can hold Anthony Edwards, but I think DFS can challenge him and make life hard on him and stay attached as a shooter. All of those other ones are mismatches. And so I don't care who they're playing alongside Ant. Whatever the liability is on the floor, if it's a Luka, if it's a Reeves, Vincent, Connect, I am relentlessly running and seeing if I can get that switch immediately. And I'm attacking relentlessly downhill, and I'm going to challenge LA's rim protection and single coverage because I'm going to want to make them work down there. I think that's the weak point of this defense. Jackson Hayes is cool, but I want to make LA work, and I don't think they have a ton of guys if we're hunting those switches who can stay in front of Ant. So I think this could be a monster Ant series, man. Ant is not what I'm worried about at all with Minnesota. With the level he's been at this year as a shooter, with the lack of rim protection that LA has, I think he could have a huge series. Again, I regurgitate this stat all the time about Anthony Edwards, but it's because I think it's so impressive. He's one of 4 players in NBA history to average 40% from deep on 10 or more threes attempted per game. That list includes Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Damian Lillard. And so when you were getting this insane rim pressure with this elite three-point shooting, he's just one of the most unstoppable and efficient and effective players in basketball. And so I think it could be a huge Ant series. What I think is going to happen, Carson, with Ant, because I don't think anybody can hold him, I think we're inevitably going to see LA cheat and throw doubles at him, and I think this series is basically going to be decided by the Wolves supporting cast, ability to knock down shots, and Ant's ability to play make out of those double teams, because that was what I would do if I was LA. I think they're going to get cooked in single coverage against him. I think that inevitably makes you bring 2 defenders to the ball, and I would probably cheat off a Gobert if he's on the floor, or whoever it is, because you're going to have to concede some things when you're guarding an Anthony Edwards. But specifically, the supporting cast's ability to hit shots and space the floor and Ant's ability to make good decisions and play make out of those double teams are really crucial for Minnesota's offense.
I think it's actually a really interesting matchup for Ant because you talk about expecting him to have a monster series, and I see where you're coming from because I feel like when you look at the Lakers' defensive personnel and you think about Anthony Edwards' skill set, your first thought is you are putting this crazy downhill athlete who's also an elite pull-up shooter against a team that doesn't have good point-of-attack defenders and lacks conventional rim protection, going to play small for extended minutes. Jackson Hayes isn't a great rim protector. He's solid there. Ant should feast in that matchup when you just think about those two components, but I don't think it's that simple. And the reason for that is basically that the Lakers are a very unique defense. Now, we know that they're going to be very switch-heavy, so Ant, who has been so phenomenal as a pull-up three-point shooter, he's not going to get to walk into any pull-up threes versus drop. He's just not going to see them. They'll switch Jackson Hayes on him. They'll switch anybody onto him. And then you know who he's going to hunt off those switches, right? You mentioned them. Luka, Reeves, Hayes, even though he defends relatively well in space for a big, he's still a big. Ant should be able to get past all those guys. And then you think, well, he's on his way downhill. He's going to now take advantage of that lack of rim protection. But what's so tricky with the Lakers defense, I thought that Jason put this really well when we had him on our show, is they force you to play in a crowd. That's how Jason put it, right? They have a lot of pretty big dudes who sit in those driving lanes and make you see multiple bodies, and they play good active help. And that's where I think more so than them throwing doubles outright at Ant, which I do think we could see, I think they're going to be like, okay, so you got by your man. We're not defending you one-on-one. We're defending you as a team, and we are going to muck things up on your drives, make you beat us as a passer, maybe force you to settle for some more of those mid-range jumpers, which we'd love you to take compared to a shot at the rim or a shot from three, because Ant's a 37% mid-range shooter this year. Like, that's where I think he's going to be challenged by this defense.
Well, and you're okay with conceding those shots, and you're okay with cheating more off of the Timberwolves' help, because McDaniels is inconsistent as a shooter, because Randall's not super reliable as a shooter. And so I think that will allow the Lakers to cheat even more in those driving lanes on Ant and force those mid-range jumpers. But I do think Ant's going to get his. I think he's going to have some big games. Like, I think that by and large, I think that's a really good strategy for LA. But I don't think it's going to be as simple as that. I think Ant's going to be able to get downhill a decent amount of time.
I still think he'll have a solid series just because he does have such physical advantages. And I honestly think he is probably going to be more inclined to use his downhill threat to free up space for himself as a pull-up three-point shooter, because I think he knows, like, I can get by these guys, but I am going to see some packed paint. And so you leverage, like, Luka knows he can't stay in front of me. He overreacts to my first step, and then I step back and hit a pretty open three. I've created a good amount of space. I think that he will have a solid series, but I think he's going to be tested a lot as a passer, and I think the Lakers will defend him better than you might think looking at their roster on paper, because when they want to be, they are a better team defense than their personnel would suggest. When you look at a couple of those key categories, they make up for it in their own funky way. What about Julius Randle? What are you expecting from him in this series?
Nothing. I don't.
Disaster? Are you expecting a disaster? Can he do it for the third time? Can he three-peat?
I hope for his sake. I mean, discourse is already nasty about Julius Randle. Not that I'm not a proponent of that, but I mean,
what?
That's why I can't bet on the Timberwolves to win this series. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag right now, but that's ultimately why I'm going to take the Lakers to win this series. Is it's like I can see Minnesota doing it, and it's going to take some very specific things. I think the Lakers would have to be off as shot makers. I think Luka would just have to be off in general. I think he's settling for a lot of threes and missing a lot of threes in a hypothetical series that Minnesota wins. I think that the Lakers' three-point shooting is disrupted by, a really good Minnesota defense. I think they're dominant on the glass, and they're leveraging their strength in matchups that they can win, and I think Anthony Edwards has a monster series. I wouldn't completely rule that out. I have a lot of respect for Minnesota, but there's three guys that I look at on this team that I just lose a lot of faith in. One is Julius Randle. I've regurgitated this stat a million times. You've probably heard. He is the least efficient 15-point-per-game playoff scorer since 2000. You don't want to be that guy. Rudy Gobert, I think, could get picked on in this series, where I'm talking about the Lakers' three-point shooting ability. It's not only volume, where they shoot 8 threes more per game with Luka. They shoot 4 or 3% better on threes when Luka's in versus without. And the third guy is Mike Conley, who just this year has taken a really, really big step back. He had taken a little bit of step back, over the past couple of years, but last year to this year, he goes from 11 to 8 points per game. He goes from a 46% shooter from the field to a 40% shooter from the field. And specifically on two-point attempts, the most damning number to me is that he's gone from a 48% shooter on twos to 38% on twos. And so I think it's going to be a competitive series. I don't think they're going to be let off the hook by any mean. I think that the Wolves are a really tough team. So I would say Lakers in 6. And another thing is I would give the coaching advantage to the Lakers. I prefer J.J. Redick. I think J.J. Redick is brilliant. I think if there's a guy that I trust more to make adjustments with his personnel within a series that will win them the series, it's certainly J.J. Redick. And so just a little, and don't get me wrong, man, I'm not logically consistent with this in all of my series. There's some other series where I have to do more mental gymnastics for the team to win. But specifically, there's just a lot working against Minnesota, man. And I guess I just see an easier path for LA with this elite offense.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that both teams absolutely have paths to victory, but you mentioned some of those key members of the Timberwolves offense you don't trust. That's been my holdup with this team all year, even as they've been winning a bunch of games as of late. It's just a lot of areas of concern for me when it comes to playoff offense. We talked about Rudy. Can he punish them for going small? I actually think this is going to be a good Conley series, even though I think he's really regressed this year. And the reason for that is I think Ant is going to be seeing multiple bodies so much. Conley is an excellent three-point shooter. He's an excellent catch and shooter, and he's a really good decision maker and passer still. So obviously the scouting report is run him off the line, try to funnel him into help in the paint, and he's just not a scoring threat. But if he's getting open catch and shoot looks because he's one pass away from Ant, or if he's able to attack with an advantage and find an open teammate, that's where I think his offensive skill set actually is pretty valuable in this series. Like we were talking with Hoop Venue, the other week about who should be that Timberwolves fifth starter and kind of concluded it's matchup dependent. Some series it's Conley, some series it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think NAW is better than Conley right now, but I would rather have Conley's offensive skill set in this series. So I'm not as worried about him, but he is still limited, like you said. When it comes to Randall, this is not a super easy matchup for him because what he does best offensively is attack mismatches. This is a defense that is going to switch a ton, but I don't see a lot of those matchups that are super advantageous for him because the Lakers have that archetype of like big, bulky wing.
And they don't play enough minutes of those other guys where he would be getting those switches, right? If it was even the guys I mentioned earlier who were smaller than him.
Right.
If it's
Connect won't see the floor in this
Vincent,
series.
They're not. And so the only guy that you could potentially attack is Austin Reeves, but it's like everybody else on the floor can guard Randall, you know?
So that's what I'm thinking. Like, I actually think Luka, just as a size and physicality counter,
100%.
pretty good. Rui, another one of those big wings. LeBron, obviously. DFS matches up pretty well. So Reeves is that one guy, but then, okay, let's say that you can impose yourself physically against Austin Reeves. Julius Randle is going to have to make all the same reads and deal with playing in a crowd just like Ant is. Like, that's just what they're going to do. They don't have conventional rim protection. Randle and Ant are guys who have athletic advantages in this matchup and could theoretically get all the way downhill. The Lakers just won't let them. They will force them to settle for mid-range jumpers, or they will force them to make kick-out passes and force other guys around them to make shots and make good decisions all series long. And Julius Randle is not somebody I trust a ton as a consistent decision maker. He's not somebody I trust a ton as a consistent, difficult shot maker because we've seen him fail in those same exact areas in the past in the playoffs. So the other Timberwolves around those two guys really have to make shots.
Yep.
And I just don't trust them enough to do that, to pick them to win a 7-game series when I feel like as good as the Timberwolves defense is, the Lakers offense is going to produce. And especially when they go small, I think that it's just a really, really difficult offense to guard.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what I mentioned in our show with Jason when I went off on the Timberwolves after that disastrous blown game. I don't trust the clutch offense enough. I mentioned this stat on that show, but 26 of their, however many, at the time was 33 losses, had been in the clutch. And that's the most of any team, the highest percentage of losses that have happened in there. It's like when you have consistently shown me that Achilles heel, the fact that in crunch time, that's when, and that's the most important thing to me about this team. Yeah. Playoffs are going to be decided by who can execute in those late game moments. And I don't trust the Timberwolves to do that. They have consistently crumbled in so many of those instances. I want to be wrong. I love the Timberwolves. I love Anthony Edwards. I just don't believe in them enough, man. I think there's too many flaws offensively, and the Lakers are an elite offense. That's a huge contrast in this series. So I think I'm going to go – I think I'm going to take the Lakers in 7. I think this goes the distance.
I can really see that. I can definitely see that.
It's because and I get that I'm saying a lot of positives about the Lakers. It's just the 7 versus 6 thing isn't faith in Anthony Edwards thing. I think that Ant is going to get them so close because I think he's that great of a basketball player. But when the chips are down, I think the Lakers will take the last game.
You mentioned the clutch factor. That is a big difference to me. The Timberwolves have consistently struggled there. And I have so much faith in a Luka Doncic, LeBron-led offense to execute down the stretch. I also think we talked a lot about what are the Wolves going to do with Luka. I think they're going to have to put Randle on LeBron just to have like a physical counter, but Julius Randle just isn't a very good defensive player. There's clearly a quickness advantage there. And then I do think because Ant is a better Luka defender than Jaden McDaniels, that allows them to put their best perimeter defender, who is Jaden McDaniels, on Austin Reeves if they do that matchup. Like if they execute this as I think that'd be anticipating.
I think he's smart.
Which I think is hard for Austin Reeves.
Very.
Like he's been phenomenal this season, obviously, but I could see them keeping him in check more. I think Luka and LeBron are the guys who are still going to have very good offensive series. And the shooters, man, I mean, you really can't understate that part of the equation. A lot of really good spot-up shooters on this team.
You put great shooters around two guys who manufacture more wide-open threes and great looks for their players than anybody else on the planet, man. It's a great recipe for offensive success.
Very difficult to guard. So I do think that this is going to be a war of a series because when the Timberwolves walk into a playoff series, I expect a war, man. They just bring that physicality. They bring that intensity, and they can win games off of playing their bully ball, being extremely physical, winning on the glass convincingly. And Ant and Randall, I do think, are going to get a step on their guy a lot and are going to get downhill a lot. Like I said, I just don't see them getting all the way to the rim a lot. And there will be games where they're making the right reads and they're making the right decisions, and the Timberwolves shoot 40% from three, and they win.
There'll be games when those lanes are getting cut off and they're settling for mid-range jumpers, and they're off as mid-range jump shooters. Yeah.
And the shooters around them are off, and they're making bad decisions. So that's where I just think I trust the Lakers superstars to create the best offense. I trust their shooting, and I think they can defend the Timberwolves pretty well. I'm going to go Lakers in a hard-fought 6. I can see the Timberwolves winning, but I have more confidence in the Lakers.